Welcome Capricorn to your in-depth monthly forecast for December 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you also get your life roadmap report 30% off, but also my free gift of your zodiac general, love, Chinese and Indian forecast for the coming year. Please see the link below for more. The personal forecast is totally unique to each person it's produced for and will give you searing insights for the next year. You'll get the rest of 24 free on the screen now. I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the month. You have a cluster of energy you can see, including the moon and the sun, the two luminaries, in your 12th house, in preparedness for the new moon, which occurs on the first day. Now there is going to be a new moon in your sign. It's a black moon, which occurs on the 30th. That's when we get two new moons within the same month, which is a very rare thing. But you start this month with that emphasis on that private healing, and in some ways more cautious part of your chart. 12th house new moons can often arouse parts of our situations we're not necessarily keen to look at. So things to do with past hurts, perhaps loss. We could feel very nostalgic for someone from our past, particularly of course with this time of year. But the key is Mercury really in that 12th house, because that can lead to mixed messages, misunderstandings, or anxieties going around our minds that aren't necessarily based in fact. Now, you have a great gift that your ruler Saturn is the steady eddy of the zodiac. But Saturn's in the part of your situation, along with Neptune, that's very much to do with how you think. And there, particularly Saturn at the start of the month, Saturn's applying to that position of the moon, the sun, but also Mercury in a broad T-square. What does that mean? The T-square between Saturn and Jupiter, for example, reaches a peak on Christmas Eve. Well, essentially, the opposition between Mercury and Jupiter can actually be quite jolly, but it could also see you do too much to support someone else's situation. So your sensitivity, kindness and compassion could be invested in the right way in the run-up to Christmas, and that can give you a lot of personal satisfaction and be truly appreciated by the right person. So if you do something for a good cause, someone who is genuinely less fortunate, you'll be surfing this energy magnificently. But if you've got expectations around certain people in your everyday world, could be neighbours, could be some friends, someone somewhere unfortunately may not actually meet them. And the reason for that is that someone actually could have a view of you that they're not expressing openly, because the 12th house in traditional astrology can be about secret enemies. Now, I don't want you to think that you've got people there plotting against you, but I do feel it's important, say for example at work, to make sure that what you do in terms of processes, you're really precise and careful. You don't get distracted, because when the swirling mist of the 12th house is engaged in our situations, it can see us a bit confused or a little bit weary. And one of the great ways to deal with the start of this month is to give yourself permission, despite the fact that Venus is in your sign, forging a very charismatic link to Uranus. Even if there is opportunities to go out and play and socialise and join in the social milieu, just be very selective about who you open up to. So if you are talking to someone you work with and it is to do with a festive gathering, if there are some sensitive strands about how you feel about the boss or the work you do, I'd keep them pretty close to your chest, unless you're absolutely sure that the person you're opening up to is someone you can count on. So those are the kind of situations you need to be mindful of. But also, just as the energies for Christmas are building up, there may be part of you that would rather actually have some time alone. And that can create some issues because people may feel that you're not really being fun, you're not joining in, and they may feel that that's a little bit uncharacteristic. When you were younger, the chances are you were a little bit more serious. And I think it's that side of your nature that could come up. But if you are involved in good deeds, you know, you have particular charities or causes that mean a lot to you, the chances are you're going to be very active in order to try and meet your obligations in that regard. But if you do have a little bit of time for yourself, or you're just more selective about your social or romantic companions at the start of this month, you'll be surfing this energy well. Because the 12th house new moon is a chance to actually grow, a chance to gain a lot more knowledge about what makes you or others deeply tick. And that's where Saturn can come back to you, because that gives you that application, that hard working part of your nature. So if you read or discuss something that helps you to become more informed, particularly about the more psychological dimension, it can be a time for you to gain a lot more insight in a very positive way. And part of that process can reach a peak on the 6th with the Mercury Cazimi. This is when Mercury, in this case in retrograde, sits between the Sun and us on Earth. The Sun's energy radiates into Mercury, and Mercury in the 12th house helps us to dive down, to use the mental faculties of Mercury, but in a more penetrative way, to try to understand those motives that I was talking about before. If you did need to do some research, or perhaps go and see someone and have a private discussion, it could be a very powerful day. But also on the 6th, Mars, the planet of desire, thrust and action, goes into a retrograde. Mars goes into a retrograde every couple of years. He's going to be retracing his steps until the latter part of February, but he's actually going to invert back into your sector of relationships, and on the 6th of January, and is going to be there through to the 18th of April. So Mars inverting in the 8th house just suggests that when it comes to a very close connection, or perhaps even a sexual attraction, that you're just more conscious of slowing things down a little bit unless you're really sure exactly where you stand. And because Venus, the planet of relating, forges that dynamic link with Uranus at the start of this month, there could be a huge attraction with someone. It may be even a confidential or secret liaison that shows itself at the start of this month. But if you're not quite sure, then just trim back. But also the 8th house can be about your long-term financial planning. If you're someone with interest in developing your own enterprise, your entrepreneurship, that also is something that could just slow down a little bit through to the latter part of February. But on the 7th, a really good news story. Neptune, the planet of dreams, but also the planet of healing and sensitivity, ends a long retrograde. If since the start of July you have felt at times a little bit confounded or unsure about certain connections or ideas, a little bit more clarity can come through. Unfortunately, it is going to be challenged a little bit in week 3, but I'll go into that shortly. On the 7th too, Venus moves out of your sign into the sign of Aquarius. Now, Venus in Aquarius can be very detached, non-judgmental. Actually a great place for Venus to be over the festivities because it can be very friendly. But for you, its application to Pluto suggests something you have been working on a very long time, perhaps since as far back as 2008, has proved to be very elusive. In other words, perhaps you've invested a lot of yourself in trying to improve your financial situation with new ideas or schemes or approaches, but haven't really seen the tangible evidence of a breakthrough you could do right at the heart of this month. But equally, if there is a complication developing in a romantic alliance, the fact that Venus goes opposite the retreating Mars from the 10th through to the 15th could make that situation very political, but also very hard to resist. So there could be someone who's going to make your pulse race fast right at the heart of this month. Which brings us to the 15th, because Mercury ends its retrograde, but it doesn't come out of its post-retrograde shadow until the early part of January. So there could still be a little bit of uncertainty or a lack of confidence, or you may feel unsure about someone's loyalty, or trust could be an issue still, but it will ease. But also on the same day we have a full moon. A full moon for you in a very practical part of your chart. Now, if there are things that you need to do for other people over the festivities, if you have to take a little bit more responsibility for some practical strands, you could find yourself thinking about those. But also because of the opposition to the Sun in your 12th house and the swirling mistiness of Neptune, this is why Neptune going direct is not going to be a panacea. If there are any office politics or work-based politics that you're finding rather difficult to deal with, that can just seem to be an even greater thing. But the 21st is really something for you to celebrate. The Sun moves into your sign. You're going to feel a surge of energy, but also a sense of greater certainty. Your self-belief will increase. Now this also ushers in Cardinal Quadrant 4, the last 13-week period of the year. Yours is a cardinal sign. So your quality is action, authority, it's an executive energy. And that is going to show itself. But just be mindful that some tender home, emotional, or even work-based issues may in some ways contrast with what you need to do for yourself. Why? The winter solstice clashes with the nodal axis. The 29th, however, is a very positive day. Chiron, along with the North Node, Chiron's been in a retrograde in your 4th house. So when the North Node inverted into Aries in the middle of July 2023, since then you may have found yourself thinking a lot about your emotional roots, family issues, anything to do with your conditioning, but most of all your need for peace and security and tranquility. Chiron going direct is going to help that, but there is a very turbulent clash between Mars and Pluto as this month comes to a close. It's going to be exact on the 3rd of January. We're also going to have it in the latter part of April too, the 19th I think, but essentially Mars and Pluto are the two rulers of Scorpio. Scorpio is about change, transformation, but it can be quite forceful. So here there could be some kind of leverage going on. Maybe it's about that rather evocative relationship that's stirring up a lot of energies within you. Perhaps it's just about a stubborn standoff between you and someone you're close to. Maybe they feel that you're being a little too controlling. Maybe it's you who feels they're being too controlling. There can be some definite push and pull as this month draws to a close, but the new moon in your sign, the black moon on the 30th, is a glorious way to bring down the curtain on this year, because if you go back to the start of 2024, Capricorn, Mercury was in retrograde. It was also in your 12th house. It was also conjunct Mars, but it was also conflicted by the dreamy, drifting energies of Neptune. So that insecurity that you may have experienced more recently could have been something that's figured quite a lot over the last year. But I feel that with Pluto having left your sign and forging that link with Venus at the heart of this month, that's really encouraging you to have belief in your values, what makes you special, and your self-worth. And because of the new moon in your sign at the end of this month, doesn't have any outright difficult energies applying to it itself, it's definitely a time to set your intentions for how you burst into the new year and really have maximum confidence in what you want to achieve, because I feel that you are going to burst into 2025 in a very dynamic way. To discover what next year will hold for you, please check out my deep dive video by clicking on the link underneath this video. But just making you aware finally of the 24th of December, because on that day your ruler Saturn does square off with Jupiter. So there could be some tension there, perhaps actually by trying to be a little bit too virtuous. If other people offer to take some of the weight off your shoulders in terms of the festive arrangements, let them, because you'll need perhaps to try your hardest to do the right thing actually won't necessarily be particularly helpful. So it's a time just to relax as much as you can, accept that there will be some tensions. That's just part and parcel of the Christmas period. But there is an opportunity with Venus in the second house to enjoy all the traditional features of this time of year. Have a lovely Christmas, a happy new year, and goodbye for now.